3 seconds, I believe, as it's loading.
Okay. Yeah, I was waiting for it to pop up.
Yeah, it says we should be good to go.
Okay. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Welcome to West Texas Empowerment. We are live and in person. I have a very esteemed cast today. I am so blessed to be joined by everyone that's on the panel today. My name is Jackie Carter, Atkins Carter. Everyone knows who I am, but I have some phenomenal people, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Everyone that you see on this panel, I have worked with. They have been a part of my life. We go years back. We just met each other. There's so many different aspects to the people that you're going to see. But the people that you're going to see, I've gotten a question, so let me go ahead and address that question. Have I vet these people? Yes, I have. I've vet them by my relationship with them. That's why you see them, and that's why you're not here. So yes, I vet them. And so, I get the chance to do that. So we're going to go around the room, and they're going to introduce themselves to you because we have some phenomenal people today. Let's start with Maria. Go ahead, Maria. Give us your first, last name, and where you're from.
Hi, Maria Estrada. I'm from Southeast LA. I'm an activist in Southeast, South Central, candidate for state assembly in the 63rd Assembly District of California, on the board of the Native Women's Unity Association. And thank you, Jackie, for having me on.
Okay, Lori.
I'm Lori Chambliss. I'm originally from Fort Worth, Texas. Now I'm from Fort Worth, originally Amarillo, and I've advocated at local city commission, county commission. I like to think of myself as the person behind the scenes.
And your lovely daughter, Mindia.
Hi, I'm Mindia Whittier. I'm a community advocate in Fort Worth, Texas. I helped co-found an organization called United Fort Worth. We focus on immigrant rights and racial justice issues. And I met Jackie through advocacy regarding the murder of Tatiana Jefferson by local law enforcement.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chrissy.
Hi, I'm Christy Darrington, and I'm just a mom, a patriot mom. I love my country, and this is my daughter, and we were involved in a protest together against each other, since it was made to be that way. But I'm from Weatherford, Texas.
Hi, I am Kylie. I am her daughter. I am an activist based out of Weatherford, Texas, but I do travel all around the country. We try to get an unbiased opinion on what really goes on at these protests, aside from what the media has to say. I'm 22 years old, and yes, me and my mom did go viral for basically squaring up on the square. And that's why we're here.
Okay. Pastor Parker.
Good afternoon. I'm Peyton Parker, and I serve as pastor of First United Methodist Church in Lancaster, Texas. And I try and be as involved in the community and issues of social justice as much as possible.
Dr. Jerry Roberson.
Greetings again. I'm glad to be here with you as always. I'm Dr. Jerry. I've been working in this space of maternal and child health services for a long time. I'll just say that. One of the things that has come up, of course, consistently has been health disparities. And you cannot talk about health disparities without talking about issues of bias and racism and cultural, social, institutional racism. Sometimes that may be presented as white privilege. And even as recent as 2 weeks ago, I heard a new term that I've not heard before called Black privilege. And I am a Black man living in the United States of America. I would certainly like to know more about those Black privileges.
Well, we're actually going to talk about that because I was going to get you and Pastor Parker to talk about that at the end of the show. So because that did come about.
Black privilege. Tell me what it is, Jackie, because I don't know about the Black privilege. I've been here for a while.
Exactly. When I heard it, I was like, So we all three gonna talk, and I think it's only befitting that us three chop it up at the end about what that is, and I guess what it was meant to be, because I've looked and it's a book that somebody wrote, but I've never seen it a term. So let's just jump right in with what we're here today. Today this is one of many platforms that you're going to see me on and some of these people on. We're kicking it off here on West Texas Empowerment. It has taken a life of its own. I've had people reach out to me about talking about this and why are we talking about this. And what I'm doing is attempting to build bridges across race and faith. That's what my intent is. If you want to know my intentions, to build bridges across race and faith. And our first topic we're going to talk about is white privilege, because we need to talk about white privilege. Now, white privilege, let's sit for a minute, because we have some white people on our panel. We have some black people on our panel. So we're going to talk about white privilege. Is there such thing as white privilege, Maria?
Absolutely.
What does it look like to you?
Basically, you could be a white person driving around and don't have to worry about getting pulled over, even if you do go through a stoplight, and there's such a thing in my culture as colorism. So I can tell you situations where I've not been ticketed based on my appearance. I've been pulled over, not had to pull out my license, not had to pull out my registration, and not get ticketed. When I was driving someone else's car, and I thought it was my car, and the lights didn't automatically come on, and it was pitch black, and I'm driving up the road to my house, and the cop never asked me for my license or anything. In fact, he showed me how to use the lights in this Infiniti SUV because I just forgot it was in my car. And these kind of things happen all the time where based on your appearance, you are allowed more leeway in many situations. And I've been on the other side of that. And simply because of who you are, how you're dressed, what you look like, you're going to be targeted. And this happens every day. And I find it really disingenuous when people say that these are isolated incidents or there's a few bad cops. This isn't a few bad cops. This is an actual environment, a policy. This is the way this country is run. The fabric of this country is woven of white supremacy and around it. And that mentality and that system targets people of color. And that's just the reality of how it is. I would like to say, the mom that said, I love my country. There's this mentality that if you criticize the police or the system or the government, that you don't love your country. It is because we love this country that we will criticize it and call out all of these disparities and these injustices and racism, which is prevalent in every aspect of American society.
Okay. Pastor Parker, try to define white privilege for us. What does that mean?
White privilege, I would say, is an inherent advantage that is given to Anglo persons on the basis of their race in society. That's my definition. I think the greatest model that we've seen here recently is January 6th. What happened with that attack or siege or whatever you want to call it of the Capitol. With that being, earlier in the summer when there were peaceful protests on the Capitol and on the White House, the approach and the presence was very different. There was National Guard already before they even showed up. They used tear gas and they used rubber bullets, whereas white folks can come up and literally siege the Capitol, break property, hit police officers, and there'd be no repercussions.
Laptops.
Right, break into people's offices right in front of the police. And we know if this was black people or someone of minority or color, they would have been met with much force. I believe there would have been massive casualties, and certainly people would not have been able to travel home and get arrested. They would have gotten arrested or laid down, unfortunately, before they ever left.
So we're going to get back to that, because I got an inbox that says that what happened? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about two things that you guys have already brought up. So we're going to park those in class. They say put it in the parking lot. We're going to put those in the parking lot because we're going to talk about, does white privilege play a role in police brutality? And I was told that white privilege had nothing to do with what happened on Capitol. We're going to talk about those two. So we're right now, I'm Mindia, tell me, does white privilege actually exist? Because some people say that white privilege doesn't exist. If you are poor, does it still exist?
Yeah, so white privilege to me simply says that my experience as a white person of living and existing and moving through the world is different than the experience of someone who has Black or brown skin. So our experiences are different. And there are certain advantages and things that are easier for me or less harmful for me because of my white skin. So it kind of in the same way that when we say Black Lives Matter, that is not saying other lives don't matter. It's simply an acknowledgement of a harmful system that exists. So I think in the same way, when we talk about white privilege, it does not say that a white person doesn't experience their own personal hardships. They don't work hard or they don't experience poverty or whatever. It just simply says that the way they experience those things is different than the way a person with Black or brown skin experiences those things. So the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. White privilege exists. And it's not something for us individually to feel guilty about. But, I think that's why a lot of people get so resistant to the idea of white privilege. We don't have to feel guilty about a system that we didn't create and build. The only thing that we have to feel guilty about is what we do about how we respond to that system. So yeah, that's my feeling is it exists, and it just means that our experiences are different.
Thank you. Chrissy, Mrs. Trumpster.
Yes.
I don't know if I said that to everyone, that Chrissy, so that's why you see her shirt, while I'm getting Texas right now, telling me, am I aware that Chrissy has a Trump shirt on? I have eyes, and I have two brothers that are looking for me as well. We are aware that Chrissy has a Trump shirt on, guys. We are aware of that. So Chrissy, do you have white privilege? I just want to know, do you have white privilege?
I guess so. I'm white, so I guess I do. I mean, I know that there is white privilege.
You understand the concept of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I do.
Okay, don't you guys?
I guess I have it. I just wasn't aware of it, but yes.
Kylie, do your mom have white privilege? Do you have white privilege?
Absolutely. And I've told her multiple times, and it goes back to the being poor and living in poverty. It has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with finances. It has nothing to do with how you were raised, what you went through at a young age, and how you were brought about. It has to do with what you didn't go through because you're not a person of color. You don't have to worry about walking down the street and being stopped just because you look suspicious because you're white. If most people, when they see me, they're like, oh, she's not intimidating. You don't need to worry about her. She's an anxious little white girl. Yes, that is true. That is very, very true. But I know that it exists. I've seen it. I mean, yes, I've been brutalized by police because of this situation. And that's something that I never thought that my white privilege would allow to happen. But I had to kind of sit back and think about what position was I in. They think that I'm trying to destroy America and destroy the country. So I got maced by police. I've got beaten up with their bikes, bruises all over my body, just stuff that I never would imagine, never would fathom that would happen to me because I'm white. And I can acknowledge that that's the only reason why this hasn't happened to me until I've put myself in this situation, is because I am no longer equal to these white men who think that they are superior, white men and women of my county especially, who think that they are superior to me because
when you say put yourself in that, wait, Chrissy, when you say put yourself in that place, what place? Because we need to know, we know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no.
What are you talking about?
Pick up for white people. I should not be defending anyone else because I've never been directly affected. Oh no, what do you mean? Wait, reinstate the question.
Okay, when you say, I know what you mean when you say those things should not have happened to you because you're white. You're kind of taking us in the direction because some of us are like, and what makes you think that it shouldn't happen to you, little girl? But I need you to tell people why those things happen to you as a white young lady, a white young girl. But in your mind, you're thinking that should not have happened to me because I'm white. So why did it happen? What were you doing?
I was standing up for what I believed was right, and it didn't align with the people who were fighting against me, and it at protests. So like I was at protests every time that I've been put in that position. It's been at a Black Lives Matter protest. It's never been at, the Fort Hood where we were supporting troops and stuff like that. It's always where there's other people who want to incite more violence than what you are trying to put. I don't really know how to word this.
Okay, so basically what Kelly's trying to say is that she is a part of the Black Lives Matter movement. So anytime that anything has happened to her, she had inserted herself in that movement. She was marching, standing up for Black Lives Matter, and in that movement. That's how her and her mom, downtown Weatherford, you have a mother who's a Trumpster, who's a Trump supporter, and then you have a daughter who was there standing up and with the Black Lives Movement, representing them. So when she's talking about that things happened to her, she's had now Anglo men who are saying, okay, you want to stand up for Black Lives Matter and be a part of this movement, then we're going to do to you what we do to them.
Exactly. I have been told verbatim, and this is I don't like repeating this, but I have basically been told, go hang with your boyfriends in a tree. Like they told me I'm not a woman to them. Like I'm literally just something like, they don't care about me. I'm not wanted in this community.
Yes, she is.
We know she is, Chrissy.
I am wanted in my community of fellow activists, but the people we have to think about it. 80 something, I think it was 84% of our county voted for Donald Trump in this last election. I'm not on that side. I'm not a part of that majority. So therefore they are treating me the way that they would treat other people. And that's disgusting. Like, why do you treat people like this anyways? Why, like anytime someone says, I say Black Lives Matter and they rebuttal with all lives matter, I'm like, okay, well then act like it. Let's act like it. And then we can all be on the same page.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's get some wisdom in here. Miss Lori.
Yes, ma'am.
You got some wisdom. You provide us with some wisdom because you've been around for a minute. You've seen some things happen. You've been a part of some eras that not trying to date you, but you've seen some things. You've seen some things.
Right. I grew up in a time, let's just be honest here, I grew up in a time that we had separate schools, separate drinking fountains, separate restaurants, separate churches, everything was segregated. That's the era I came out of. And so now, I said, I feel very blessed because God has let me live long enough to see change. I want to share this one thing. Just this past week, it's something I saw. One of the things I do is I go into early childhood centers and I evaluate teachers that are trying to get it's called the Counselor Developmental Associates, and they're getting their certificates. These are teachers that are learning how to work with children. And I had one that I went into, it was an elderly Black lady, and I found her to be very compassionate, very intelligent. I was very impressed with this lady. What I didn't like was the facility where she was working. They had her mostly in the kitchen or letting her come in and maybe cover for a teacher in the classroom. In other words, what I consider a very subservient role. And that showed me this when I went in there, the privileges I have had because I'm white. Prove myself. I don't always have to show something. People just naturally think, well, you're white, so you're smart, so you're this, or you're that. That lady has not had the same privileges that I have. And it makes me realize what I grew up in, all the segregation that I grew up in. But like I said, I'm very blessed that I can now say things are moving forward, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Dr. Roberson, what do you feel Black Lives, in your seat, what does white privilege look like to you? because you are a part of corporate America. You're able by your title and by your background to walk into some doors that a lot of Black men don't walk into. So what does white privilege look like to you?
To me, white privilege looks like an unspoken set of rules that really equals acceptance. So when we think about our language and we think about how language translates into action, white privilege is an unspoken language that stimulates a certain amount or a set of actions that are acceptable. Whereas if somebody who is not white did the same thing, then the language would suggest that those behaviors are not acceptable. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I've been working in my discipline since 1995. And so there have been some fairly significant accomplishments made. I'm very proud of my body of work. I have the opportunity to sit and stand before our country's governing body. It's been more than once where I've sat in the room at round tables with people, visited, spent time breaking bread together. And then when it was time for them to introduce the keynote speaker, the person that was the host would begin to read off my bio sketch. And to be able to see the reaction to some of my white colleagues who I was just literally sitting at the table with, and now I'm gonna get up and go stand on stage and be the speaker. You have no idea how many times the response to that was a bit shocking. And how after hearing about me, then you could see and feel the shift in perspective. Now, I've also gone in spaces of diversity awareness, dressed like, maybe like I would dress on a Saturday morning in my sweats with my baseball cap pulled down and twisted to the side, you know, from the hood, we call that cocking the cap, right? So wearing the cap that way and moving the same way I move, the response to that is very different. So again, white privilege looks like not having to necessarily think about how you choose to wear your cap or how you choose to put on your clothes for the day. I think it's an unspoken set of rules that speaks to acceptance. Does this make sense to my colleagues here, my peers?
Well said.
It does. Pastor Parker, we have a Mr. Britt. Do you know who has joined us here?
I don't know. I thought that was.
Does anyone know who Mr. Britt Pike is?
No.
I do.
Oh, you do? Who?
I do. He's I believe you live in Sacramento, right, Brett? He's actually come to some of my protests. You showed up at
yes, hello. How are you? Yes, I saw your post on Facebook, and so I thought I would drop in and see what was going on.
Okay. Well, nice to have you. So the next question is, we've all talked about that. Maria, you mentioned police brutality. My next question is, does white privilege play a role in police brutality? Pastor Parker.
Definitely. It definitely does in the response. I mean, I already kind of talked about the biggest example that just happened, but it does. You know, I've had experiences. I'm not someone who's a quote unquote hood person. You know, I was the valedictorian, so to speak, of my college class. I graduated at the top in 3.5 years. I've done a lot of work to better myself and to be the best that I can be. But the way that I'm even approached by police, you know, you wouldn't think that I've done anything good in my life. Now, again, this is not an indictment over everyone, and this isn't the only way I've been treated by police. I've been respected. I've been treated very well, and I'm very close to a lot of people who are in that profession. But there have been instances just based on where I was in the city, the zip code, that I was treated poor. And there was a mentality of suspicion outright that was based on what I looked like instead of what was going on.
Okay. Maria, you kind
Jackie, I need to jump in right here because I do have friends that are police officers. Some of them are Black, some of them are white, some of them are Asian, some of them are Latino, Hispanic. I don't think that the police officer situation is about Black and white. It appears that way on the surface, but I know people that are not white that are just trying to get through their shift, serve in the capacity that they've chosen to, and make it home to their families. So if you really want to talk about this, what I would say we're speaking about is an inherent bias. Now, an inherent bias, again, it's that stuff that's written so deep into your subconscious and your super subconscious that it sets in motion a behavioral pattern that one may or may not be aware of. Now, on top of that, I think there are some folks who are taking advantage of the authority they have and the fact that they carry a gun. I will also share, unlike my dear brother, Reverend Parker, yes, I came from the hood. I saw dope being moved every day. I saw people around me. They wasn't gonna rob from us, but they lived up the street from me and they might rob from somebody else. I'm not saying I can't justify any of those behaviors, right? But what I will say is I understand some of the choices that they made. If you're robbing, you're stealing to get yourself something to eat or to be able to feed your family, I mean, how about somebody teach that man how to fish? But if you're robbing because you can and you choose to do so, then you get what you get. There's a lot of conversation about police brutality and I agree. It makes me sick to my stomach to see another Black person snatched out of the car and their life taken or their life put in danger just because they were driving while Black. The other side of that equation is, well, why is it that police officer is so amped up that they cannot de-escalate the situation? That's a skill set. That's something that is a matter of training. And then there's this piece about the inherent bias. What is it that's really at the core of this person's existence that's got them feeling like they have to automatically reach for their weapon because they're stopping this person that looks like me? Why is it that they feel the need that a conversation won't be strong enough to get to the bottom of whatever is going and write the ticket? The flip side of that same argument is, why is it that when they walk up to the car, the person in the car is already defensive? That's an inherent bias too. And that's the part that some people that look like me don't want to talk about. If you reach for a police officer's firearm or anything on that tool belt, you're basically asking for a hostile and intense response. Again, I feel like I'm very fortunate because I do get to see both sides of that equation. It is heartbreaking to talk to my friends that are police officers who are judged before they are judged as they try to serve and take care of people.
And I'm going to take an issue with what you said because they chose a profession that historically was created to oppress people. The entire history of the police was to protect property, and that property was slaves, and to bring slaves back to their owners. So, I mean, you could try to explain it however you want, but at the end of the day, the purpose of the police is not to protect us, it's to protect property. So if you remember at the 2008 crash, when all that happened, the first thing the cops did was go to Wall Street and surround the buildings and protect the criminals from us. They're not here to protect us, they're here to protect property and wealthy people and this system. So in that sense, anyone who becomes a police officer has to take responsibility for that choice. Also, in all of this, if you're a police officer and you know that other officers are committing crimes, which here in California, Xavier Becerra, the Attorney General, actually tried to block a list of police officers with criminal records and had to be sued. Journalists got the list and they publicized it because there's a lot of police officers with criminal records. Police are protected by their unions more than any other in any other field, any other union in the country. There is no other field that you could murder someone with impunity and get paid vacation. There is no justification for that. And the fact
I agree with your second point. I agree with your second point. But your first point, I vehemently disagree in the sense that your first point about, you know, the police and their history, okay, and who they're designed to protect. If I have a problem right now, who am I going to call if somebody's breaking into my car? I got to make a decision too.
That's irrelevant to the point I just made, because the reality is that the reason the police are there in the first place, the reason they were created was to protect property, right? I'm not saying that the police don't help. I call the police. I've been stalked. I've had my house broken into. That's not the case. And at the same time, I was asked, "Do you have a boyfriend?" Like, it was almost as if I did something wrong that brought on this person stalking me and breaking into my house and breaking into my car. But aside from that, things happen every day with police where police actually function like a gang and they protect each other. You hear it all the time, the blue line. They witness themselves committing crime. So when you're saying that one cop is good and one cop is bad, well, where are all the good cops when the bad cops are doing bad shit? Nowhere to be fucking found. How many times have you heard cops actually, testifying or going after cops? Look what happened to Serpico. That was what, 40, 50 years ago? I mean, it's set up this way. It is set up to protect the police unions, one of the most powerful unions in the country. And they're set up in a manner where you can't, and the fact is, even in California, we have least transparent laws than states like Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. You can't even find out their history. We know that police have 40% like alcoholism rates, wife abuse, spousal abuse, domestic violence, all of these things. But yet, when you hear of something happens, Ahmaud Arbery gets shot, immediately they try to demonize Black and brown people, that they just say if they smoked a joint in junior high or, said a bad word. And all of a sudden, this victim of this police brutality, this police crime is demonized, and the cop is made to, they're never going to refer to the cop as somebody with a bad history or that beat his wife or that has a drug problem. That's never going to be disclosed because they're protected in such a manner that it's always the people who are on the opposite end of that are going to be attacked. And that in itself is privilege. It's part of, like I said, it's part of this system. And it's always going to be the oppressor who's protected and the oppressed who's going to get shit on. And that's just the way it's always been. That's just the reality. My experience with cops from a very young age, walking into my house, beating the fuck out of my brother because he asked for their warrant, dragging my other brother out in his boxers, 14 years old. My mom screaming, crying. I'm running, trying to jump on the cop because I'm 11 years old, trying to protect my brother. My mother grabs me by my hair and, pulls me down and says, no te vayas para allá porque te va a matar. And she thought that the cop, if I attacked the cop, he was going to kill me. And I was, 11 years old. This kind of stuff happens every day, all the time. And if one cop did it, another cop knows about it, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Right. And I think you both have valid points. What the question that we were just trying to bring out is, does white privilege play a part in police brutality? And I'll wait, and then we're going to go to the next question. In my opinion, I think that white privilege does play a part in police brutality, for the simple fact is that we have to program our kids totally different. They don't have to program their kids totally different. It's not that we have to talk to our sons and tell them and put how to place their hands, what to do when a police approaches them. We have to talk. I have 2 daughters that have boyfriends that, hey, if this happens. So to answer that question, in my opinion, I think white privilege does play a part in police brutality. So we've all agreed in the same sense that it does. it does play a part in police brutality. Let's move on to what happened. I think Pastor Parker touched on it at the Capitol, because this is going to piggyback off of training. So if we're going to say that we need to train police officers how to escalate, well, they must have got a crash course on that day, because they learned how real quick how to de-escalate. They from what I saw, I don't know if we all watch the same news or whatever, and just for what Kylie said is that once she identified herself as a part of Black Lives Matter movement, she was considered black in their eyes. So she was worthless to them. So when I have people that are telling me, that have texted me and said, you know, what happened at the Capitol was not white privilege. It was people following and being loyal to an individual to say that they're going to take their country back. They're going to intervene in the process that was trying to take place. And I'm going to pull that up as I pass that over to Mendia. Mendia, did you see white privilege on what happened at the Capitol?
Yes, and the white privilege, well, there was many different aspects of it, but it was very much seen in the response to the activity from the very beginning. So I'll share a bit of a personal example. So a few years ago, I participated in a rally at a federal courthouse on the border, down on the border with Mexico. And it was a rally to protest the separation of children, immigrant children, from their parents that was happening, and as a punitive measure to try to curb immigration. So there was a large group of us that were protesting on the steps of a federal building on the U.S.-Mexico border. And we desired to enter the federal courthouse and occupy it, have a sit-in and occupy that space that our tax dollars pay for. And what my experience was in that instance is that the law enforcement agencies that were there were able to use a series of mechanisms and techniques to escalate and manage the situation in such a way that we couldn't even obtain entry into the building. So I share that example to simply say, of course, we were not engaging in the kinds of aggressive behavior that we saw at the Capitol on January 6th, but nonetheless, it was our attempt to, we were asserting our rights to enter the building, and they were able to effectively prevent us from doing that. And so the point there is, we know, and we have demonstrable examples that there was the capacity to prevent the access that occurred, but that wasn't done. And we've even seen now video footage and pictures that demonstrate, the law enforcement personnel that were there kind of facilitating almost access and granting selfies with the protesters. So I think, when we can see that kind of tangible evidence that there's a difference in the way situations are handled, then we know that the white privilege was present and active. Like we can see it. We have the evidence.
Okay, Chrissy.
Yes.
Speak on your brothers and sisters that went to the Capitol.
Okay, and this is my true feelings and opinions, and I know that we probably do not watch the same news at all, because I will not watch mainstream media, because this just, anyway, it's all fake. But anyway, I do know that videos have come out, multiple videos have come out where there were actually Antifa people that they didn't breach the Capitol. I'm going to go ahead and say that too, because I've seen tons of videos. The police were opening gates, letting them in. That's true. And I've seen the proof of the setup with Antifa before the rally began. And it wasn't Patriots did go in there. I agree. But I know for a fact, the videos I watched, they were trying to stop these Antifa members. And I know they're Antifa because they've been arrested and they've come out as Antifa. And they actually have videos of people at the Antifa rallies that were at the courthouse. That's a fact. So I know it just depends on where we get our news. But I am going to say that a lady was killed So that's not, to me, that's not a different kind of treatment. I know that in the streets in Portland and all these places, there's a lot of violence going on, and there's a lot, they've been able to get away with it. I mean, it's still going on because they're getting away with it. They're not being shot in the streets. They're not being, they're not being punished. But that lady did get killed in the courthouse. So that to me is a problem.
I have a question. You refer to them as patriots. Why?
Well, people that support Donald Trump, I guess, and want our country to be free. We want liberty, we want freedom, and it's not going to be taken away. We refuse to allow it to be taken away by anyone.
Okay, so basically, I have a question that leads us right into. I had someone text me. They said, when they say, give me liberty or give me death, because that's what they said. Give me liberty or give me death. So, Lori, are they still patriots? Did you see patriots at the Capitol? Is that what you saw?
I don't know whether they want to call themselves, but I will say this, that, I mean, the ones I've seen that have been arrested here in the DFW area, yes, ma'am, they are patriots. A lot of them, I have Facebook friends, family who bill themselves as patriots. Somebody said, well, we don't dress like that. Well, my question is, how do you dress? You know what I'm saying? It's, they say, well, it's Antifa, whatever. It's hard to say, but to me, what I saw people, I saw white people. And I would say it wasn't just one lady that was killed. There were others also that were killed. All of it had to be totally unnecessary. I do want to share one thing here real quick. I know y'all are aware of this, but it takes more training, more hours of training to become a barber or a beautician than it does a police officer. And I think that one of the big problems that we have is not been training in cultural differences. For example, if you're around Native Americans, I taught over around the Navajo Nation. If you're getting on to a Navajo child, they're taught to look down, that shows respect. There's been a lack of training in that. Also, my background as a speech language pathologist. Police are now just beginning to get training and working with children with autism. Training needs to be done. And even what happened up in Washington, there wasn't the training. It looked like pure chaos. And I think it's very sad that it happened.
Thank you.
So Jackie, I think, again, to tie this discussion together, right? The police officers, security officers, safety personnel were involved in this situation at the Capitol. And do I believe that there was some assistance provided to those that were rioting from the inside? Absolutely. In fact, there is video that suggests that that's true. And then in regards to our earlier conversation, police officers and what role are they playing? Well, there's an African-American, Eugene Goodman, who was a police officer inside of the Capitol, who actually distracted people so they did not go into the chamber where the senators were. So again, it goes back to there's an inherent bias that we sometimes are not even aware is presenting itself. That guy, Eugene, I'm confident that he was just trying to do his job. I'm confident that he wanted to get home to his family just like everybody else on that day. But inherently, instinctually, and perhaps some of the training that was involved was, hey, listen, I'm here to serve, and maybe I can save some lives if I can distract them and get them to go this way. A part of that was him doing his service and leaning into his training. But here's the piece. The other part of that was he had the testicular fortitude to step up and perform in the moment of challenge. This is the problem that I see, not only with police brutality, not only with riots, be it Black Lives Matter or the Proud Boys. It is people responding to those requests with gall and sheer tenacity to say, this is not allowable, not here in this country. If I look back at the history, well, yeah, just like all other Black people in this society, I deserve my 40 acres and a mule. I'm still waiting on that. But do I think that's coming in anytime soon? Probably not. Therefore, I have to begin to address my piece, my part of this puzzle, the best way I can by having conversations, just like the conversation we're having right now. This is us beginning to address the issues, and this is also us beginning to move in the direction of a solution. So what would have been a solution on the 6th?
And that's what I want, Pastor Parker, because we're getting ready to round up. And I knew this discussion, the comments on Facebook are like, we're going to have to revisit this. I mean, there's so many comments. I've got 50 inboxes right now where people want to come in and be a part, and we didn't provide that. So we'll look at that. Pastor Parker, the whole objective and my intentions is to build relationships across race and faith. Because as we discussed in our pre-show, I'm tired of the Zoom meetings. I'm tired of the extensive training. I'm tired of reading all the recommended books. I'm just tired. I'm tired because I want us, what's next? You know, we did a program not too long ago. What's next? What do we do? How do we start this? We started the conversation. We've had a great conversation. We've got a very diverse group. So Pastor Parker, you and Jerry, I want you guys, as we wind out, before we wind up, keep that thought, because we're getting ready to put some actionable items. If it has to start with us, you know, there was a term that was given to us called Black privilege. We don't have to expound on this, but it's out there. I guess it's circulating. So is there a such thing? I'll answer it first. Chris, I see your hand up. You're not Black, but I'll let you answer it as long as you're quick. So maybe you got an insight that, you know, Trump maybe have a Black brother or something. No, I'm just joking, y'all. I'm joking. So is there such thing as Black privilege? I say I've never heard of it. I think the way it was trying to come to me, because I grew up in a small town and I might not have experienced racism to the extent that some people experience racism because I was an athlete. So we were given certain passes and people looked out for us, but that still was not Black privilege, because at the end of the day, even if I did date a white boy and their parents let him date me, I'm sure they told him, you're not going to marry her. And at the end of the day, I was still Black. Pastor Parker, is there such thing as Black privilege as far as you're concerned?
I don't even have to expound. I just want to say no. In no way, shape, or form have I ever experienced or known about with anyone else who's Black that there was some sort of privilege.
Jerry?
You know, I'm searching my mind right now to try to find something that's politically correct and won't get some of my clients and some of my friends upset with me. But I haven't read the book. I've not read the book. I see that there's a book by a gentleman that speaks about this. I will read it because it sounds like I need to read it, okay? But what I can speak to is the Black experience, right? Let me just tell you, when I get on the elevator and I see people grabbing on tight to their purse and scooting all the way over in the corner, and all of a sudden that number at the top of the elevator is so interesting that that's the only place they can look. When I walk through Walmart and people, I see them on their little radios talking back and forth, I don't know, maybe that's Black privilege. When I decide I'm driving down the highway and I'm driving 5 miles under the speed limit and the police officers pass by me and look at me funny, maybe that's Black privilege. Maybe just maybe it's Black privilege when I stand before audiences and they want me to tell them more about what the statistics and the data says around health disparities. Maybe that's Black privilege because I have lived that life and I can express those data in a way where life is breathed into them. And the data points become real live living, breathing human beings. Maybe it's Black privilege. Maybe, just maybe, it's Black privilege when they look at me and say, well, Jerry, you're okay. You're not like the rest of them. Do you know how offensive that is? And how you then, so again, in terms of that solution thing, I would fall short on what on my part of this journey if I don't take that moment and help them to understand why that statement is offensive and how it need not happen with me again, and how I would encourage them to really self-reflect on the I'm trying not to use it in bad language, okay?
Right.
But, you know, there just sometimes, listen, you have to stand in your truth, and there comes a time when you have to meet people where they are. I cannot say that I fully subscribe to the ideology of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., nor can I say that I fully subscribe to the ideology of Malcolm X. But what I will tell you is, I can speak to my truth as it has been in my life, and I can tell you that there is still a tremendous amount of work that needs to happen as it relates to race relations. I can use a different term, implicit bias. We can talk about structural racism, systemic racism, but the bottom line is the same. Hell, it's racism, and it goes both ways. You know, I have people in my family that say I'm pro-Black. Well, if you pro-Black, you just as racist as the one that's pro-white. What are you saying?
Chrissy, when you had your hand up.
A lot to say on it. And I'm going to go ahead and say there is a lot of racists out there. That's evident. That's clear. We see it all the time. White privilege does exist. I know that. I've raised my kids. I'm not saying not to see color, because I think, all colors are beautiful. And the experience that what really, clicked with me is I have a son, or I consider him my son, and his name is Trevor, and he's Black, and I love him with all my heart. And he was telling me a story about when he and Kylie got pulled over one time, and he had to tell her, don't say anything, because she's a little white girl, he's a big Black guy. He's real tall. He's 6'5". Yeah, he's very handsome. Just fitting that in there. And he had to tell her to be quiet, don't say anything, and just let him handle it. He was scared that they would think he kidnapped her. When he told me that story, it crushed my heart.
Right.
I'll pick up on what she said. So basically the situation that she's referring to is she cares very deeply about this young man who was introduced to me in my high school life, and it slowly but surely became like a son to her. And this is kind of like what she's talking about was kind of my first awakening with like what white privilege really is and how it affects us. I was drinking. It was a New Year's party. I was underage. I think I was like 17, 18. I was drinking, and he was being, the big brother who was going to drive me home. And we ran through a stop sign because there was a tree blocking it. And the cop pulled us over and came up to the car, like with his hand on his gun. And Trevor was reminding me, keep your phone down. Don't say anything. Just don't say anything. Like, don't be over whatever. Don't be ridiculous. And I was just like, that's stupid drunk. Just like, no, screw you. I can do whatever I want. It's a cop. They're not going to do anything to me.
That's the privilege.
And that's the privilege. That's the privilege. Like, I really thought that nothing was going to happen. And then whenever something did happen and I saw the look on that cop's face and how it was like, why is this man with a little white girl? Why is this big Black man with a little white girl? You could see like what was going on in his brain and how he just, I can't even explain it. Like,
but
right.
That's exactly how, and that broke my heart. It crushed me when he told me that. I couldn't even. Anyway, he's opened my eyes a lot to the things that go on, with him and his family and other people of color. He's opened my eyes to me a lot. But I've always known there was racism. I've been in families with racists. I mean, there are racists everywhere. And now there are racists on both sides. I agree with that, because I've never seen so much hate toward the white man just because we're Trump supporters. I'll say that. Trump, everybody says, if you're a Trump supporter, you're racist. Well, I happen to firmly believe Trump is not a racist at all in any form. You ask somebody, why is he racist? Nobody can ever tell you an example of things he said that's racist or whatever. But then they go
I
and
can
vote.
give an example.
Well,
Hang on. But then they go and vote for Joe Biden, which we have proof hit out of his mouth of him being as racist as you can be. He did the
Okay.
crime bill. He says racist stuff out loud on television all the time. But people voted for this man.
And
So
he's
if
your
it's, I'm talking, hang on. So if this is really about Black Lives Mattering, and why are you voting for a man that does not like Black
no,
lives?
this is about, what we're talking about is white privilege.
No, I know. I'm saying like the with the racism. With
Right.
everyone saying if you support Trump, you're a racist. I'm not a racist. You know me, Jackie. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not a racist. And
Well, to speak to that, then I'm going to let Pastor Parker and to wrap it up. I can't, I love you, girl, but I can't. My mom for 30 years was married to an Anglo-Saxon white man, and I had a whole family, and I loved him. I cannot say, because I learned so much when he passed about the family, that I always thought they wasn't racist, but you just don't know. You just don't know, and you don't know people's truths. So we're going to park that right there. It's been a pleasure. An hour.
No, wait a minute, Jackie. No, we can't end it right there. That's not gonna work. I'm sorry, sister. I have to say this. Listen, those of us that's on this call right here. How many of you have spent time with the Grand Wizard of the KKK? Well, I think that leaves me. I have spent time with the Grand Wizard of the KKK. I have looked into his eyes and listened to the foolishness that came out of his mouth. And I'm telling you, we cannot pretend like racism, prejudice, bias, they all exist. And they're not getting ready to just go away. So my challenge, because I don't believe we can just end, and I think this is a part of why these things. I hate getting to these conversations that don't go anywhere, because when we getting ready to end this Facebook Live, and where do we really go? What have we really done? What action steps have we identified? Well, I'll be quiet after this. I feel like I've talked too much on this session. I apologize. Maybe we'll get to do it again. I'll be able to be quiet next time, okay? But what I have to say is this. It's not a huge charge for any one of us on this Facebook Live to have conversations with people that are in our immediate circle. I challenge you to talk about this topic. I challenge you to be able to listen to what the other person has to say and respond to it, not react to it. I challenge you, when you walk away from that conversation, to get on the internet. You don't have to go far, because you're probably holding a cell phone in your hand right now. Get on your cell phone and do a little low-level research on whatever it was that they said that you didn't agree. My dear sister, Maria, I don't know her, but I promise you, because of what she said to me, I'm going to go and do some reading on the history of the police. Why? Because I want to know. And I want to know how I can use what she shared with me to become a part of my vision, my perspective, my outlook on this issue. Clearly, we all see that it exists. I don't think that I don't think that's truly the debate here. I think the debate is, what we're going to do.
What we're going to do about it. Mindia, you wanted to say something? Then Pastor Parker, you can wrap us up.
Yeah, so, I think I said kind of at the beginning that I made the comment that we don't necessarily have to feel guilty about our white privilege because we didn't create the systems, but what we do have to take ownership of is what we do with the knowledge that white privilege exists. And how we ourselves are complicit in systems of oppression by living in our white privilege. And what that looks like is different for all of us. So for me, one of the ways that living in white privilege looked like was that for the first 40 some odd years of my life, I chose not to be active in dismantling systems of racism, right? So I chose to live in my bubble and not take up the mantle of trying to address the systems of disparity. And you know, I'm going to speak from a place of love, but I'm also going to speak from a place of truth that we're seeing white privilege in this dialogue today. Somebody, you know, saying that they're hijacking the term patriot and saying that them supporting a person that has a demonstrably racist track record, you know, to do that, to support that person, that is living in white privilege. So, you know, I just would take it back to, for those of us who are listening to this discussion, to really take a look at ourselves and where is the white privilege that we're exploiting to our benefit. You know, you want to make this about solutions, and I think that's for white people, that's where that starts, is to take a good hard look at our own lives and where are we letting ourselves live in that privilege.
Right, and thank you. Because we do sit on platforms, a lot of us have some large circles, so we need to, and that's why we're starting this. This is not the stop. We're starting. Today was just a kickoff of building a bridge between race and faith. And so this is just a start. We're not going to stop here. We're going to come up with some actionable items, because some of us are in some pretty large circles. Okay, Pastor Parker, go ahead and wrap us up. And then, guys, we love you. Once Pastor Parker finishes, of course, West Texas Empowerment, you guys know I love you. Thank you for your evening. It's been off the charts. We have to revisit this, because this is just, I mean, I have comments. My daughter's texting me. Everybody's texting me because they think I'm not seeing their comments. But I can't do anything with the comments and questions right now, because I still have 5 or 6 that I haven't even asked. I told people I was going to ask. We're out of time, and I want us to stay in that time, because it's just best that we operate in that time. Go ahead, Pastor Parker.
Well, I think I share with a lot of the panelists that I wish time was not up. There are a lot of things even that have been said today that I think definitely need some going deeper and some deeper exploration. But I'll say this. When we talk about building a bridge between race and faith, I'm just going to speak from the faith aspect of it. I think we've already talked a lot about race, what we can do. But I think faith actually here has been part of the problem. Even our faith and our orientation to Christianity, I'm only speaking for Christians, I can't speak for other religions. For Christianity, the message of the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, has been co-opted, and even in some senses bastardized and weaponized for oppressive purposes. This is not simply in race. This has to do with sexism. This has to do with centrism. This even has to do with many of the mentalities of aggressiveness and of violence that are often quoted and used in scripture to justify the actions in which many of us take. I am calling for faith, people of faith everywhere, to reset themselves, to take a good look at all of their holy books, all the words of God that we claim that we live under. Even when I heard people talk about being a patriot, to say that as followers of Jesus Christ, your allegiance is not to any country, but it's to Jesus Christ, who is Lord. To remind yourself that Jesus Christ supersedes the president, supersedes your political party, supersedes your racial background and your lived experience. And if we were to subject all of that under the lordship of Jesus Christ, we would see that Jesus was not a racist, that Jesus lifted up ideals that promoted the common good. And to give some reprisal, I have to say, because I talked about and preached about that, I don't believe that every person who's a Trump supporter or voted for Donald Trump is a racist. However, I will say that you did not do a good job of listening and empathizing with millions of people who have been affected not simply by his words, but by his actions, both privately and corporately in business. He has a track record of employing immigrants and barely paying them anything or treating them bad. He has a track record of abusing and sexualizing women. He has a track record of speaking about African countries and calling them SO countries. He has a track record in his policies to get undocumented immigrants from the census. So all I'm saying is there's people and parties and groups who have lifted up how his policies, his conversation, and the way that he acts both privately and publicly has hurt them. And if we say we're people of compassion, that means that we listen to others and we see how they're hurting and we seek to not allow that to continue. So overall, I think we need a reorientation of our faith and what it means to be followers of Jesus Christ. I think, and I'll end with this because I'm not here to preach a sermon, but I do want to say there is a road to peace. And peace is kind of like, I describe it as taking the scenic route. Many of us are on a fast path to whatever we desire in life. We are so concerned with what's going on with our lives, with our families, and our bubbles. It's like driving through life on the highway. We don't really see what's going on around us. When you take the scenic route, you take a journey that is intentional to take in the sights and view what's going on around you. And I challenge us all in our own cars of life to not simply go down the highway, but take the scenic route and be intentional about seeing the experience of all the people that are around you, not simply whites or blacks, but poor and all types of people, gay, straight, so that because we can learn from everybody. And too often we are just in our camps and we're not willing to move anywhere. So lastly, I would just say, listen to what people have to tell you on both sides and seek to come to some form of agreement and moving. We don't have to agree on people because the Bible tells us we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but we are wrestling against principalities and of ideologies and theologies that do more harm than good and do not lift up the common good of all of God's children. So I challenge you to look at your faith and how to actually respond as a disciple of Jesus Christ and learn how to be like Jesus, who looked at the multitude and had compassion upon them because he actually understood and sought to understand.
Thank you, Pastor Parker.
And Jackie, if I can say one more thing, I think until we start getting the truth from the media, and I think until we start having the truth, until the news starts being the truth, we're not going to be able to see both sides. I mean, we see both sides, but we're also getting two sides to every story. So until we can realize that we need to open up to look at the other side and see what they're getting, and so we can understand, I think that's going to be the link that builds us when we all realize what the other side's being told and how to help the other side know the truth. Until that gets fixed, I don't know that we have. I don't know what to do. Let me
just quickly respond to that because you said something earlier when you were talking about Trump versus Biden, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. I just want to
right.
Because right there, you just said that we're getting different media, and those things that I lifted up, even in my response, those things are documented in media. I mean, I can go on YouTube right now, look up. I can just Google and search Donald Trump racist things.
Yeah, I have.
In a whole clip. So if we can show you the proof, I don't care if it's coming from CNN, Fox News, or YouTube. If the clip, you know what I'm saying? If the clip is there, then how do you respond to that?
Right. And I do have a lot of proof that I've tried to show people, and they are completely closed-minded to all the truth I show them.
It's every time. It's a lot of the same stuff. Whenever we ask for that proof that you guys have, it's always the same stuff. It's, you have to find it yourself.
No.
Why is it that you have to find it yourself?
I've sent people a lot of proof of everything I say. If I don't say it, if I can't look it up and find it myself, I study, I research, I study a lot. So I know that what I'm putting out there, I won't say it if it's not proven, if I don't have the proof. But I always get that's from a conservative site. That's from a conservative page. That's from, well, yeah, because we don't have news anymore. Conservatives don't have news.
The only reason why media is biased in the first place is because of Republicans.
Anyway.
Is because of
Well, guys,
Jackie, wait, Jackie, wait, Jackie.
I gotta say something.
go ahead, Marie.
First, I'd like to say it is not true that all Trump supporters are racist. That's just not true.
Thank you.
That's a fallacy. And Biden's a racist, and everybody's happy Biden got elected. And I think he's terrible. I think Kamala Harris, her record as Attorney General in California is horrific.
Exactly.
She kept innocent people in jail, knowing they were innocent with evidence. She's a horrible.
Yeah.
So that being said, is we have a lot more commonalities with
Yes.
people we think are our enemies than we have differences. And it's finding those commonalities that's going to get us to all come together, because there is this fallacy that, every Trump supporter is bad and racist and every Democrat is good. And I can tell you, I'm an elected member of the LACDP, which is the largest and most powerful Democratic party committee in the country. I cannot tell you how corrupt and how just vile some of the people in this organization are. And this is in California, that's supposed to be so democratic. The level of racism and misogyny, and I mean, I've been physically assaulted, verbally attacked. The Democratic Party's come after me hard. And all I do is expose their corruption. I mean, I don't, just like you said, I come with receipts. I'm not here just, to hear myself talk. Neither party is representative of us. This is, as Fred Hampton said, this is a class struggle. This is about class. So,
Right.
so race does play a part, but this is about class, and this is about maintaining power in the status quo for the people who control that power, control that money, and control where we're at right now. And they control the media. You can't take a lot of what they said. I just said earlier how the media will demonize a black man that was murdered by the police and bring up his record. That's intentional. All of this is intentional, and it's to portray certain groups of people,
narrative.
whether it's Mexicans, whether it's blacks, whether it's whites, a certain way.
Right.
So we have, when you acknowledge that and you recognize that, then you could start from there. But this fallacy that all Republicans are bad. Republicans supported me in my race. Bill Stein supported me in my race. So I had opposite ends of the spectrum, supporting me just because of the commonality in what we believe in. And the sooner that we come together on those common goals and beliefs to empower each other and help each other, because we're only as good as the very poorest and the very most destitute people in our society. And right now we're failing miserably. And until we are able to help them, working together, organizing and empowering the people in our community who don't think they have power, we're never going to get ahead. And that means talking to people that you have to have hard conversations with.
Right. And that's what this is. This is a hard conversation, but I challenge everyone that we need to be the change that we want to see. It starts with us. It starts with me. It starts with us. And that's why I wanted to kick this off. It starts right here. Jay, did you have something that you wanted to say before we wrap it up? We're wrapping up. You sound like a Baptist preacher. I'm trying to close 3 times.
No. What I'll end with is this. It's a passage from the Constitution. It's a passage from the Bible. The Constitution says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Amen.
The Bible says, be not deceived, for God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And so it is that we have a document that governs our country. We have several sacred volumes that govern our own individual behavior. I say to everybody that's on this Facebook Live, as well as any of those that are listening and observing, I just challenge you to search yourself and reconcile these issues on your own behalf and speak from that place when you speak to others.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank everyone that is looking, that watched and joined in with us today. I know so many people's there. I got inboxes. We'll do this again. I'll get with Pastor Parker, get with some of the people, because some people want to talk to individuals. And we'll see what it looks like next time. Thank you, guys, my guests, my panel. Thank you so very much for answering the call and trusting me enough to bring you in this space. Trusting me enough, because it had to be that you had to trust me to bring you here, because this is not an easy topic. And but I thank you guys, and I hope, and I know that some of us are going to do some work together. So we love you, West Texas Empowerment. Inbox me, email me, and we will be doing this again. Thank everyone who joined us today, and we're going to sign off.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye-bye now. Blessings all.
Bye.
Take care.
Be well.